Hey people, it is Thursday, February the 8th. Time is 4:37 in the afternoon. It's currently a very uncharacteristically mild 7 degrees Celsius here in early February, and no sign of winter here in the city, as you can see. I'm in Queen's Park, and yeah, it looks more like fall than the dead of winter. Not that I'm complaining. I'm going to make my way from here in Queen's Park over to Charles Street, where I'll be walking east along the full length of Charles Street. Charles is a rather interesting street in that it's gone through some major changes over the last 10 to 15 years, mainly in terms of high-density residential development. And the western leg here, we will begin our walk along Charles Street, passes through the University of Toronto and the Bloor-Yorkville area as well. I think it's been a while since I've done a walk along the full length of Charles. Definite fall vibes here, as I was saying. Secondary entrance to Museum subway station. Oh, that dog is barking at a squirrel over there. Squirrel's like, you can't get me. So here's the northern entrance to Queen's Park. So you have University of Toronto buildings on both sides right now. The campus spills over on the east side of Queen's Park. And it is rush hour. Wednesday rush hours tend to be one of the busier days of the week now. So this is Queen's Park, the street. And Charles Street begins just right up ahead. And here's the entrance into Museum subway station. And the Royal Ontario Museum across the street. And just up ahead is Bloor Street. See the Park Hyatt Hotel. So here is the beginning of Charles Street. The character changes quite drastically the further east you go. More U of T buildings. There are lots of neat little walkways winding all through this part of the campus, and I have walked through some of those in previous videos. And we're here, and here's where things start to change, where U of T buildings give way to high-rise residential. This part is part of the Bloor-Yorkville area here. Very expensive buildings along this stretch. Once we cross Yonge Street, the buildings get taller, but not quite as fancy. This might be the last U of T building here. That's one of my favorite residential towers in the city, 1 St. Thomas, and one of the most expensive to live in. And there's St. Thomas Street. Looking up towards Bloor Street, you can see the Hermes store terminating the view, to give you an example of what this neighborhood is like. There's kind of a cool breeze. It makes it feel a little less mild than that 7 degrees. And here is Bay Street. At the Manulife Center. At one time, this was the tallest building in the Bloor-Yorkville neighborhood. It's certainly not anymore. Many buildings have surpassed it just in the last 12 or 13 years. So this part of Charles Street is Charles Street West. Once we cross Yonge, we'll be on Charles Street East. Yonge being the dividing line between the east side and the west side of downtown. Things are rather commercial along this stretch, but once we cross Yonge, it becomes mostly residential, although very high and tall condominium residential. So I struggle to get my words out there. One of the uglier apartment buildings in the area. I think that dates back to the 1960s.
There's always that like that. There's no way.
8 Mile Detroit style pizza. I was just talking about this place in my recent live stream. So I passed by another Detroit style pizza place on Church Street. Yonge and Charles. So we'll be crossing over to the east side. Look south down Yonge. The new One Bloor West, otherwise known as the One, has been growing rapidly, eventually making its way up to 91 stories, which will be a good deal taller than the 76-story One Bloor East across the street. Strange place for a tent there. All right, so we're on the east side now. And here is where the Charles Street condo canyon really kicks into high gear. If you go back in time less than 15 years ago, none of these buildings really existed. Maybe just one of them had popped up, this smaller one here. This is an old street of low-rise residential.
It's not like I can just go in the store and drop the money on it. No, I wish.
Making sure I don't turn my camera to my right. I'm walking past a place called the Sanctuary, which is a drop-in center. A large crowd of people hanging out in front. And I have no doubt they would not take kindly to being shown on camera. This is a beautiful building here, St. Charles Court. New buildings on the rise. This one on the right is nearing completion. Across the street, another one is just starting to rise that will be just as tall as its neighbors eventually. Some of the old historic housing stock that's remaining here. Fortunately, as far as I know, no beautiful historic townhomes such as these were demolished for these new high-rise condos. And that girl just hit that truck as it turned out in front of her. She was not having that. It is rather hostile the way the cars just come out right across the sidewalk here. And I can't go any further here due to sidewalk blockage, which is quite common in these construction areas. So as I was saying, many of these old, more historic buildings were preserved or incorporated in some cases into the new developments, such as right here. There's an old low-rise apartment building called the Manhattan, and the facades of that were preserved. And you can see a bit of it peeking through there behind the tarps. And here is Church Street. I was like, is this church? Yes, it is. So look south towards the Church Wellesley Village. And further eastward we go. sure how I feel about this stucco building here. It's like, in some ways I like it, but in other ways I don't. And this place has been derelict for quite a few years now. When I first moved to Toronto, it was still occupied and it looked a lot nicer. And it's certainly been left to rot in the last 5 years or so. And I've been in that condo taking photos from one of the upper floors where my friend lives, from her balcony. And I do have that video on my channel, checking out the awesome views of downtown. I think it's in my Toronto Features playlist. And Charles Street ends here with the gaudy Rogers head office terminating the view. And this is where Mount Pleasant Road and Ted Rogers Way merge, and then from this point south it's called Jarvis Street. So I'm going to continue just a bit further east. It's a very awkward crossing here. So there's look south down Jarvis. Now I have to cross diagonally here. So I was talking about when I said it was awkward. Maybe I'll just go. I don't see any traffic coming. Don't do what I just did, kids. Pay attention to your lights. And that was all of Charles Street, but I think I'll just take us over to Selby Street, just to extend the walk a little bit longer. This is Mount Pleasant Road. Jarvis Street and Mount Pleasant Road just act as a sort of high-speed traffic sewer for the most part. It's not a highway per se, but it certainly acts like it in some ways. There's a staircase over here that'll take me up off this pseudo expressway. There we are. There's Bloor Street just right up ahead. And this is Huntley Street. I'm not sure if this is related in any way to the old religious TV show called 100 Huntley Street. So I'm pretty sure 100 Huntley Street isn't really a thing on this actual street. Nothing of note anyway. Because this is 77 Huntley Street. So is there even a 100 Huntley Street at all? And here's Selby. And that very tall residential tower is called the Selby. That is not a condo, those are rental apartments. Very expensive though, from what I hear. Not as expensive as the one St. Thomas though.
Hello? Hello?
I don't know why she would use speakerphone when she could just probably hear better without speakerphone, but who am I to say? And I think there's a proposal here for a very tall tower. Just going to check it out. .48 and 59 stories, 2 towers on the side of these old townhomes here. Well, it is already a very high density area with many tall buildings around, so it doesn't seem too out of place to add more density here. And straight ahead you can see another tall building under construction. It will eventually be about as tall as its neighbors here. This is the Canopy Hotel, and behind it is the condominium. And we're just about at Sherbourne Street here. This is as far as Selby Street goes. Sherbourne subway station is just right over there at Bloor Street. And I think this is a very nice restaurant here where they incorporated this old mansion into the Selby development. And they did something similar right next door. with this mansion and its adjoining condo. I think they actually had to move the mansion over, so they literally picked it up and moved it over from its original location. They've done that a number of times with other projects in the city, picking up an entire historic building and relocating it. And heading south on Sherbourne, but I'm going to start to wrap up this video where we walked the entire length of Charles Street and then some, where we also did a walk of Selby Street, heading from west to east across the northern end of downtown. So I hope you enjoyed the walk as I head past the St. Jamestown neighborhood here. Leave a comment down below and be sure to like, share, and subscribe if you haven't already done so. And also make sure you hit that notification bell so that you don't miss any of my videos. And another tall tower is proposed here, replacing these old homes. As I was saying, if you'd like to support the channel, by all means, check out the link below where you can find a link to my PayPal, or you can support the channel via a super thanks or by becoming a channel member if you wish. And you can find me on Instagram under KContinuum. So thanks for watching, and thanks to all the channel members. And be sure to keep checking back, because as always, there we go, I will continue.